Hey, welcome back to the Secret Underground Lair. So today I'm lining up the pieces so I can make the dado cuts on the sides of this cabinet. And just a few things that I want to point out that I need to consider while looking at this cabinet. And the first thing, of course, is trying to determine what side is going to be the inside, what side is going to be the outside, front and back. So to do that, I'm looking at the wood and looking for blemishes that I need to hide or try and cut out of the piece as much as I can. So what I have as an example, right down on this edge, and it's a little bit difficult to tell with the light, but this edge here is a little bit bruised from handling, from the machining and handling, and it wasn't cut off. There was a blemish on the other end that I needed to cut off, and at the sacrifice of having this blemish. But by putting this piece here on the inside of the cabinet at the bottom, there's going to be a face on here, like a little foot on here. This is now underneath the cabinet, so this is never going to be seen. And with a little sanding, I should be able to get most of that out, and maybe even using an iron and steam, I might be able to bring that up a little bit and get hide most of that blemish. But if anything remains, it'll be on the inside. So this blemish dictates inside bottom. Now I need to determine which side is the front and which side is the back. And on this little edge, I have a little blemish from a cut. I thought, okay, that should be at the back. Two reasons. One, if there's no baseboard involved, then I'm going to have just a little bit of filling in that bottom corner. But if there is a baseboard that I want to accommodate, then this piece will be cut out and that'll go away entirely. So good candidate for the back of the cabinet. This piece wasn't quite so bad. A little discoloration here. That's the only thing. That'll actually sand off. So there's nothing on this side that speaks out and says you need to do something specific. So I was able to just kind of arbitrarily determine which is going to be the front, which will be this edge. This will be the back over here. And I arbitrarily picked this as the bottom. Things get a little concerning here now because you don't want to mess this up. The back is going to have that 1/4-inch dado to accommodate the back of the cabinet itself. So there'll be a 1/4-inch dado running down that side and a 1/4-inch dado running down this side. I have marked where I want the dado for the lower shelf and the dado where we're going to put that, what I've referred to as the anchor shelf, the middle one, to hold the whole cabinet together. So I'm going to make those cuts now. Something to consider, again, I'll just mention that again. If there's baseboard, like this cabinet is going to be sitting up against a wall, so there's likely going to be baseboard at the bottom of the wall, where it meets the floor. And we could make a little accommodation. If it's wide baseboard, then you may want to cut a little relief in here so that the cabinet itself can be flush to the wall and we clear the baseboard. So I'm going to speak to our customer about that, see what they have on the floor. And now let's just get set up to make these cuts with the router. I did a little test cut with the router for these dados. And what I need to do, because my router has a base on it that is 2 7/8 of an inch from the center of the bit, I'm going to mark a line here, 2 7/8, so that we can, I'll mark the line appropriately so that I get that router running right through the center of that line. So I have our piece marked where I want the router to come up to. I put my guide there. Now I'm just going to use a utility knife here and score these lines so that we don't get any tear out from the router. Okay, we have that now set. Now we can put the router on and run that through. Other trick I want to do with the router is the router obviously spins in one direction. And what I want to be doing is positioning the router on the piece such that as the blade spins, it actually pushes the router into my guide here, which is going to be this way. So I'm going to put the router there, and as I move it through the piece this way, the bit is naturally going to be pushing the router up against that fence, and I won't, I'll reduce the tendency or reduce the tendency for the router to wander. And I've just noticed that what I've done is I've positioned my fence incorrectly. I've positioned it 2 7/8 from the edge of this. It needs to be 2 7/8 from the center. So I have to make an adjustment here. Be right back. Okay, I have the router now set to a depth of 1/4 inch. And I'm ready to make our cut. So I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup on the bottom edge of that. Probably just go over it with a little bit of sandpaper, I think. But by scoring the edge, we have no tear out. Let me bring in for a closer look there. So just having a close look at that edge, that is just a real nice, sharp, crisp edge. No tear out at all. Here we got the line marked, guide set in place. Make the cut. And just a really nice clean cut. Let me get the other piece set up on the table and we'll make those 2 dado cuts. So I'm going to take the 1/4 inch dado off the back of the cabinet. And I made sure that I am on the back of the cabinet. I have marked every edge so I know what I won't make the mistake. I've set up a long fence. This is a cut off from the cabinet when we were cutting them to length, or width rather. So I have a good straight edge here that was up against the fence of the table saw, so I'm happy with that edge. And the router is still set to the correct depth. So I'll just run that cut all the way down. Very happy with that cut. And I stopped the cut at the bottom shelf. There's no need to extend the back all the way down beyond that. So the back will stop at that bottom shelf. Okay, I'll get the other piece set up here and we'll make that rabbet for the back on the other side. So that represents all the router work that needs to be done on the sides of the cabinet. The next operation on the sides of the cabinet is drilling holes for the shelves where they're going to sit. So I'm going to, I'll lay out the marks for those shelves, center punch them, and then we'll get ready to drill those. That's kind of a long and tedious process, but let me set up the marks for it first. Okay, got the holes marked and punched on both sides of the cabinet. I'm not going to drill them yet until I have the actual shelf bracket that we want to put in here. There are a couple different sizes available, and I want to make sure that I get the right size before I drill those holes. So with sides now fairly much to the point where I want them, with the exception of the holes drilled in the top to guide the top in, I am now going to go get another piece of wood and we'll rough cut that so we can get the top cut, middle shelf cut, and the bottom. So we get those pieces ready. Back in a minute. Got another sheet of plywood in here. I'm going to rip this down here. This will give me the top and the bottom pieces. So this is my rough cut, then we'll run it through the table saw to get it to the right dimension. Okay, we'll now go to the table saw, get this cut to 21 1/4. Okay, a little bit of math. Our top is going to be curved around like so. And I know that the overall width is going to be 38 inches from outside edge to outside edge. And I know that the radius of this curve on the outside edge is 5 5/8 of an inch. So that radius is consistent here and here, well, there and there. So I know it's 5 5/8 inches from there to the end of the curve, 5 5/8 from there to there. So 5 5/8 plus 5 5/8 is 11 1/4. Take that away from 38, and you wind up with 26 3/4. So the distance from the start of the curve to the start of the curve is 26 3/4 inches. But I know that the distance around here is more than 5 5/8. That's now the circumference of a circle, at least a quarter of the circumference of a circle. So this being the radius of 5 5/8, the diameter is 11 1/4. And if I multiply that by 3.14 pi, I get the circumference of the whole circle, 35.325. Since I'm only dealing with a quarter of a circle, this being the quarter, the rest would be around here like so. That's a pretty bad circle. So I'm just dealing with that quarter. So divide 35 by 325 by 4, I get 8.8321, which roughly 8 7/8 inches. So if that's 8 7/8, in fact, it's a little bit less than 8 7/8. 8 7/8 is going to be 8.875. So slightly less, so I have a little bit of leeway if I cut it a little longer. So 8 7/8 here, around that bit, plus 26 3/4, plus another 8 7/8 gives me 44 1/2. So that's the length that the top needs to be, and when these sides are rolled over, it'll come down to 38 inches. That's the theory. Now, to make this curve piece, we're going to be making a bunch of kerf cuts in the wood. So there'll be a series of cuts, and I'll do a little calculation to tell me how many cuts I need to make, but there'll be a series of cuts like so, and then the piece can bend over. This all gets glued back together. But I'm going to make a buck to hold this piece before anything gets glued. So I'm going to start with making a buck. Back in a minute. All right, I put together a little buck to help us get the appropriate curve on our top for the cabinet. So I'm going to now, and about this little buck, these holes in the end are so that I can put in a clamp and hold the piece up tight here. I could put a clamp here, hold it there, and then the piece will come out over this end and I can clamp it down here. So lots of opportunity to clamp it as it is being, as the glue sets and dries. I can also run a clamp from that back end out to here, which is probably going to happen as well. So a couple clamps along the curve, maybe 3, we'll see. And then long clamp here and then a clamp here. So it'll be held very tightly in position. Now, need to cut our piece to length, and I calculated the length to be 44 inches. I have marked a line here, so we're going to cut that off. And then we'll calculate where we want the kerf cuts to be. And those are calculated, they're not just random cuts. So let me cut this to length, and then we'll come back and calculate the kerf cuts. You got the fence set, the cut line taped, the piece is supported. This is the piece we want, and I'm going to be just on this side of the line. I can see the line through the tape, so I'm comfortable with the visibility that I've got. Time for a new battery. But this is kind of a key moment. I want to make sure that I know the exact width of this cut, because that plays into the calculation of our kerf. So I'm just going to remove the tape from here. So this blade is as I said, a really thin blade that gives me a cut of a 1/16 of an inch. Normal blades are 1/8 of an inch, so this is considerably less. All right, let me finish off this cut. And there is our cut. All right, a little bit of quick math here. Some inside-outside diameters. Again, we're dealing with the outside diameter of this piece is 8 7/8. That's that quarter of the turn. The inside diameter of that quarter turn is 7 5/8 inches. The difference being 1 1/4 inches, or 1.25 inches. Now our blade is not is 0.0625. That's a 1/16 of an inch. So the 1 1/4 inches that we need to have difference, if we divide that by the thickness of the blade, that means we will need to make 20 cuts. So if we need to put those 20 cuts into this 7 5/8 inches, that means we're going to divide 20 into 7.58, and we get 0.38 inches between every cut, or roughly 3/16 of an inch. That's 0.375, 0.38. We're close. So we'll go every 3/16 of an inch. From here, we're going to make a cut. Now, I'm going to start actually by finding the center and do the 26 3/4, and I'm going to work my way out, so there should be a little bit extra at the end. So we'll find the center of the piece, go 13 3/8 of an inch from there, and then start marking lines every 3/16 of an inch from that point on for the 20 cuts that we need to make. Okay, I found my midpoint, measured over here 13 and, what did we say we were going to do? 13 3/8. And the divide by 20 yielded not 3/16 of an inch spacing, but 3/8 of an inch spacing. So I've marked all the lines here where I want to make those cuts. There are 20 lines here to give us the 3/8 inch spacing on the kerf. So when we cut this through, that should bend over and give us our 90 degrees that we want. It occurred to me that I may have a little bit of an issue with this tail that's left over. I want that tail, but that may put us, the height of the cabinet, a little more than 92 inches. We might be 93, but I'm going to make this top first, and if we need to, we can trim off the top of the sides to ensure that we don't go beyond the 92 inches. This is a very tall cabinet. The typical height of a ceiling in a house is going to be 96 inches, so an 8-foot ceiling, sometimes a little bit less than that. So to stand this cabinet up, we need a little bit of clearance, and I can't go beyond the 92 inches. Anyway, got these pieces now marked. Not sure that I want to cut it yet. One thing that does need to happen before I do make this cut, though, is I want to put the 1/4 inch rabbet on the back, the same as we have for the sides, to accommodate the back panel. So I think I will make that cut now, do the routing cut. Having made that cut, I'm not quite happy with it. I want it to be a little deeper. Okay, that'll give me what I want. Okay, so there we go with the top piece, cut to length, cut to width, rabbet on the back to accommodate the back panel. And now just, we have a buck ready to cater for this bend and ready to make these cuts. But it's late in the day. I think we're gonna have to make that tomorrow's video. So again, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.